Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you a breathtaking story that will stir your emotions and challenge everything you believe about life and the afterlife. Meet Elowen Sinclair, who, at age 17, had a near-death experience in Italy and returned with an urgent message about November 10th and 12th. What she saw on the other side is impressive and will leave you speechless. So, leave your like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any details. Get ready for this journey that could transform your view of the world. My name is Elowen Sinclair, and at 17 years old, I was about to live the most memorable experience of my life, something that would forever change the way I saw the world, the universe, and my own existence. It was the summer of 1997, and I was in Asheville, North Carolina, a picturesque city surrounded by mountains and known for its artistic community and vibrant spirituality. My parents, although loving and protective, had never left the United States, and the idea of traveling to Italy for the first time filled me with a mixture of anxiety and uncontrollable excitement. Preparation for the trip was intense. Every detail seemed like a step towards a distant dream. I spent entire nights researching Rome, Florence, and Venice, looking at photos of ancient cathedrals and ruins that promised to echo stories from centuries past. Maybe it was the euphoria and my constantly moving mind that kept me from sleeping. With each restless night, the shadow of exhaustion grew, but I didn't want to look tired on my first big adventure. It was then that, in a moment of impulsive decision, I bought some caffeine pills at the corner pharmacy, those called no-dose. I knew it was a risky bet, but enthusiasm outweighed reason. I remember the day of the trip vividly. The bus that would take us from Florence to Rome was comfortable, but I could barely stay still in the seat. The engine rumbled gently as the Italian landscapes passed like vivid paintings through the windows. Green mountains rising in the distance, rolling vineyards, stone villages that seemed suspended in time. Everything was new, beautiful, and surreal. My tour companions laughed, exchanged jokes, and took photos nonstop, while I tried to keep up, even with my heart racing from the pills. It was then that the first twinge of discomfort made itself felt. A chill ran down my spine, and cold sweat began to form on my forehead. I blinked a few times, trying to shake off the strange sensation. I looked around, looking for something or someone that could anchor me to reality, but the feeling only got worse. My heart started beating too fast, like I was running an invisible marathon, and the world around me started to spin. As the bus glided along the winding roads of Tuscany, the feeling of panic began to intensify. The sound of other young people's laughter sounded distant, muffled as if I were listening through a glass wall. I tried to take deep breaths, but each breath felt insufficient. Sweat accumulated on the back of my neck, dripping down my temples as my heart raced in a frantic, uncontrolled rhythm. "Calm down, Elowen," I muttered to myself, in a tone low enough for no one to hear. I remembered the caffeine pills I took that morning and the day before. More than recommended, more than I should have. I wanted to convince myself that it was just a temporary reaction, but my body wasn't responding as expected. My hands began to shake, and a sharp stab of pain radiated from my chest to my arms. It was as if reality was slowly fading away, leaving only an echo of what used to be. Next to me, Mia, a friend I made during the tour, noticed my discomfort and leaned over, touching my arm. "Elowen, are you okay?" His voice was a worried whisper, but it sounded as distant as a scream muffled by waves. I looked into his eyes and tried to smile, but my face seemed to no longer have control over its own muscles. Before I could respond, a searing pain cut off the rhythm of my breathing. The world around me began to darken at the edges, like a curtain slowly being drawn back. The last thing I heard before absolute silence was the sound of the driver shouting something in Italian, followed by a chorus of alarmed voices around me. And then, everything stopped. The feeling was strangely familiar, as if I were returning home after a long journey. My heart, which before seemed ready to explode, suddenly ceased all activity. I was overcome by absolute silence, without pain, without fear, just the realization that I wasn't there anymore, at least not in the way I was used to. I floated, seeing my body limp on the bus seat, Mia shaking me frantically while other passengers looked on with panic on their faces. It was like watching a scene from a movie, but this time, I was both the protagonist and the spectator. The moment the silence took over was both frightening and peaceful. What was once a mad rush of heartbeats and a barrage of voices and sounds turned into an almost sublime stillness. I was out of my body, hovering just a few feet above the chaotic scene unfolding on the bus. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, but the clarity of the details and the awareness of everything around me said otherwise. I looked down and saw my body inert, my eyes closed and my face pale as snow. Mia continued to shake me, her hands shaking in desperation as she called for help. The driver, with a panicked expression, tried to maneuver the bus safely, shouting quick orders for others to move away. There was an aura of tension that seemed almost palpable, a whirlwind of mixed emotions in the air. I turned around, trying to understand what was happening, and realized something extraordinary. I could see in 360 degrees. I could see not just what was in front of me, but everything around me at once, as if my perception no longer had limits. I noticed, for the first time, a subtle energy glow surrounding every person and object on the bus. It was as if threads of light connected every living being, interconnecting everything in an invisible dance of vibrations and pulsations. Is this real? I thought, but my voice didn't echo like a question. It was a mute realization, absorbed by the new form I inhabited. It was then that I noticed a feeling of warmth and familiarity to my left. I turned my attention to an empty spot in the bus aisle and saw a figure begin to form, as if emerging from a white fog. Before I could react, a gentle, welcoming flow of energy washed over me, and in an instant, I was transported to a completely different place. Everything around me was white, but not ordinary white. It was a light that transmitted peace, love, and security so intensely that words seemed small to describe it. There, in the midst of the ethereal vastness, I felt the presence of something greater, something that looked at me with a care I had never experienced before. A figure approached, radiating serenity, and his eyes, although with androgynous features, were strangely familiar. "Welcome, Elawan," he said, without moving his lips, his voice resonating in my mind like a melody I always knew but had forgotten. Being in that spiritual state was like experiencing a heightened version of myself. There was a clarity and awareness so profound that I had never felt in my earthly life. Looking at my body on the bus, the scene didn't cause me to panic. Instead, I felt a calm curiosity and fascination. I watched as people moved in slow motion. The sound of their voices seemed more like a distant echo than a noise. Every detail, from the pores on Mia's skin to the texture of the seats, was visible with almost unreal clarity. As I floated, I noticed something besides the people in the bus. Looking out the window, I could see Italian fields and mountains radiating a constant energy, as if they were pulsing in harmony with the planet itself. It was as if the landscape had a life of its own, a soul that I had never noticed until then. Trees in the distance exuded a vibrant green aura, and even the rocks gave off a subtle glow. Everything seemed interconnected, each element emanating a flow of energy that danced in a rhythm I could feel but not describe. Driven by instinctive curiosity, I approached the bus driver, who was gripping the steering wheel with sweaty hands, his brow furrowed in concentration and fear. I passed through his body as if it were mist, and the sensation was unexpected, a mixture of warmth and serenity. It was as if I had momentarily absorbed his feelings, the tension, the responsibility, and a twinge of genuine concern for the passengers. The realization that humans, in essence, share such universal emotions hit me with a new intensity. It was at that moment that I felt a change in the atmosphere around me. A warm force enveloped me, like an invisible hug, and I was sucked back, or rather, transported to a place that defied any concept of time and space I knew. The scenery was infinitely white, but not empty. There was a texture, a depth, as if the air were made of filaments of soft light. Feeling this was like being back in the womb, surrounded by inexplicable comfort and security. Suddenly, the presence I had felt before fully materialized. He was a tall, androgynous figure, with serene features and eyes that seemed to contain the universe. "Elawan," I said, and the sound reverberated inside me, like a familiar melody welcoming me back home. I knew, without knowing how, that that being was my guide, someone or something that had always been with me, but that only now I could see and understand. The kingdom in which I found myself was of indescribable beauty. The light around me not only illuminated, but seemed to communicate, conveying a sense of peace and love that penetrated every fragment of my being. It was a space without a horizon, without beginning or end, where everything merged into perfect harmony. I walked, or rather, floated through that place, moved by a desire that wasn't mine, but that, somehow, I gladly accepted. The sensation was of being led by a river of gentle energy. Michael, the figure who guided me, floated beside me with a serenity that radiated confidence. His presence was familiar, as if I had known him my entire life, but I couldn't remember where or how. He had no defined gender, and his face had soft androgynous features, with deep-set eyes that seemed to reflect entire galaxies. When he looked at me, I felt like he could see everything I was, and everything I could be. "Elowen," he said, and the sound was like music that resonated in my soul. "You are here to understand more than what your physical eyes can see. This is a place of learning and revelation." His words were not just sounds, they were impressions, feelings that expanded within me, bringing understanding without the need for explanations. I wanted to ask where he was, but before the words could form a question, he gestured with a slight movement of his hand, and a new scenario began to appear before us. It was as if the white, ethereal air was shaped into images and colors, revealing an energy field where streams of light flowed from all directions. Suddenly, a figure of intense, sparkling light appeared before us. His wings were like glowing mists that moved slowly, and his presence commanded a respect that made me want to kneel. "You need to know about the days to come," said the figure, its voice echoing like an angelic choir. "From November 10th to 12th, humanity will undergo a transition, a period of great spiritual and physical impact. You must be prepared." The words carried a seriousness that struck me like lightning. The air around us seemed to vibrate with the gravity of that message. It wasn't just a warning, it was a summons. My heart, or what was left of the sensation of it in my spiritual state, pulsed with the importance of that moment. Michael placed an ethereal hand on my shoulder. "This is the reason you came here today, Elowen. You cannot return without understanding the message you must carry." I wanted to ask what exactly I was supposed to do with this information, how I could change the fate of humanity with something that sounded so big. But the words disappeared as I was swept away again by a wave of heat. The white realm around me began to transform, and I felt like a new journey was about to begin. As the light around us began to move in gentle waves, the angelic figure that had spoken to me became even more radiant, as if he was about to reveal something of immense importance. Its wings, composed of thousands of particles of light, seemed to pulsate in harmony with the energy of the place. I felt small in his presence, but not scared. It was as if I knew I was safe and welcomed. The silence that followed his statement was so thick, it seemed to have weight. "The days of November 10th to 12th, repeated the figure with a voice that reverberated within me, will be a turning point, a spiritual transition that will affect all beings, visible and invisible. The planet, which you know as Earth, will undergo an alignment that will open doors that have long been closed." My thoughts swirled in a whirlwind of questions. What did spiritual transition mean? How could something like this impact people's lives? Before I could formulate any questions, the figure continued. "Many will feel the change, but few will be aware enough to understand. Love, empathy, and spiritual preparation will be the keys to going through this period with serenity." I looked at Michael, who was observing the scene with an expression of serenity, but also of responsibility. He turned to me and said, "This message must be taken back. Elowen, you were chosen to remind the world of the importance of what is to come." The pressure of responsibility fell on me like a weight. A mixture of fear and purpose gripped me. "But how can I do that?" I asked, my voice sounding weak but clear. "I'm just a 17-year-old girl. Who will listen to my words?" The angel tilted his head slightly, and his gaze softened. "Don't worry about the how. Just carry the truth with you and allow it to find its way. Those who need to hear will hear." For an instant, the light around us became more intense, as if space itself was bending to the energy of the message. I felt a wave of warmth course through my being, a kind of infusion of courage and understanding. Michael nodded toward me, and in that moment I realized what was happening was bigger than me. It was something that transcended what I could understand at that moment. "Prepare yourself," said the angel, his voice now softer, almost a whisper. "Your journey is not over yet." Before I could process the entirety of what that meant, the light around us began to unfold again, and a new vision emerged as if we were about to step through a veil between dimensions. The white realm around us seemed to pulse in response, preparing me for the next step in the journey. The light around us began to break apart into a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes that swirled and intertwined. It was as if the white realm I was in unfolded in layers, revealing a vast expanse of stars and galaxies that stretched on for an eternity. Michael was still at my side, but now his form seemed more fluid, less defined, almost as if he too were part of that cosmic immensity. I felt myself levitate as I watched the scenery transform. All around us, currents of light and energy passed in all directions, weaving a spectacle of movement that transcended everything I knew. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice echoing strangely, as if each word had an echo of its own. Michael didn't need to answer. Somehow, I knew. It was the space between realities, a corridor where souls traveled, where energies from different dimensions met and crossed. I looked further ahead and saw something that took my breath away. A colossal spheroidal ship, made of a material that seemed to pulse with life. Their surfaces reflected the colors of the stars around them, constantly changing from shades of deep blue to sparkling silver. All around him, orbs of brilliant light moved in a coordinated flow, coming and going as if they were living beings in constant transit. Some orbs moved quickly, leaving trails of light, while others slid slowly, as if in contemplation. "These souls are on a journey," Michael explained, his voice sounding like a whisper in the back of my mind. "Some return to Earth, others go to higher dimensions, and some, like you, come here to learn." The traffic of ships and entities made me realize that life was much more complex than anything I could imagine. I felt the vibration of beings that were not human, but that had a distinct and deep consciousness. "There are so many forms of life," I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. Michael nodded, his eyes reflecting the myriad of colors that surrounded us. "Humanity believes it is alone in the universe. But here, you can see that everyone is part of a larger tapestry." A little ahead, I saw a stream of light that turned into an ethereal river and flowed into an infinite horizon of sparkling liquid water. I knew it was the next destination. We were carried by that current of energy until we crossed an invisible barrier, where the universe of stars merged with a world of intense blue and infinite seas. The beauty of the new setting took my spiritual breath away. An aquatic planet stretched out before us, with 3 moons hanging in the sky and a pale blue sun illuminating everything with a serene light. The planet before us was an immensity of waters so deep and crystal clear that they seemed to contain the secrets of the cosmos. As we approached, I felt a sense of peace envelop my being. It was as if the water had its own energy, a pulse of life that communicated directly with the spirit. The 3 moons hovered over the horizon, each emanating a subtle, mesmerizing glow that painted the sky with a palette of bluish and silver tones. Michael guided me toward the surface of the water, which reflected the pale blue moons and sun like a celestial mirror. When I touched the water with my spiritual form, I felt neither wet nor cold, but a vibrant energy that coursed through my being, connecting me to the planet in a way that transcended physical touch. "This place is a connecting point between what is known and what is forgotten," Michael explained, his voice reverberating like a serene breeze. "Here, life flourishes in ways you never imagined." Suddenly, the surface was breached by a colossal creature that emerged in a graceful leap. Its body resembled that of a brontosaurus, but adapted for aquatic life, with fins instead of legs. It was a majestic sight, and its movements were so fluid that it seemed to dance in communion with the waves. All around him, schools of brilliant fish sparkled like precious stones, completing the spectacle. "Do they know we're here?" I asked, marveling at the harmonious interaction of the beings around us. Michael smiled, and I felt his energy radiate a welcoming warmth. "Yes, they feel our presence. Here, consciousness flows like water. Everything is connected, and now you are part of it." With a light gesture from Michael, we dived together into the blue expanse. As we glided through the ocean, I noticed even more intriguing beings. There were algae that pulsed with a collective intelligence, their fibers emitting a soft, rhythmic light, as if they were talking to each other. And then I saw the mermaids, but they weren't like the mythical figures from Earth. They were creatures of varied shapes, with hybrid features between humanoids and aquatic beings, moving with an ethereal elegance. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity, and some approached, examining us with expressions that I could interpret as amazement. I felt Michael's energy expand and surround us like a protective field. They see and recognize us as visitors from outside, he explained. The marine beings began to emit harmonious sounds, like an underwater melody that vibrated in sync with the water. It wasn't a language I could translate, but I understood that they were aware of our presence and, more than that, they accepted us as part of that moment. The environment seemed to be alive with a subtle hum of communication and communion. I was fascinated by the way everything from algae to larger creatures seemed to participate in a network of consciousness that made the ocean a unique organism. Michael's presence and the reaction of the beings around us brought me a deep sense of belonging and admiration. I was beginning to understand that life was much larger and more interconnected than I had ever imagined. After exploring the aquatic planet and witnessing its vibrant web of life, I felt a gentle tug at my core, as if an invisible current was calling me back. Michael and I were slowly lifted from the blue expanse, rising amid currents of energy that mixed with celestial light. When we finally emerged from the spiritual ocean, the landscape around us dissolved into a whirlwind of light and took us back to the white, ethereal realm. It was like returning home, enveloped by the serenity and peace that the place conveyed. The air seemed to pulse with a serene rhythm as Michael approached me, his eyes reflecting a warm glow. Elowen, the trip we took was not just a revelation of what lies beyond Earth. It was a demonstration of what sustains all forms of life: connection, love, and kindness. These are the true forces that keep the universe in harmony. Michael's words reverberated through me, triggering a wave of deep understanding. Images of the aquatic planet appeared in my mind: the sentient algae, the curious mermaids, the colossal sea creature that danced in the waters. Everyone seemed to be part of a single purpose, a harmonious flow in which each being contributed to the balance of the whole. But why me? I asked, feeling the weight of responsibility fall upon me once again. Why was I chosen to see this and carry this message? Michael approached and placed an ethereal hand on my shoulder, conveying a feeling of warmth and comfort. Because in your heart, you carry the seed of understanding. The world you live in needs people who see beyond the material and remember the importance of love and kindness. This is the most important lesson of all, that love can transform lives and heal wounds that you didn't even realize existed. The air around us began to vibrate with a golden light, as if the kingdom itself responded to Michael's message. It was a reminder that this knowledge was not just for me, but something that should resonate in the world I knew. The feeling of warmth that enveloped my being brought tears to my eyes. Even in my spiritual state, I understood that love and kindness were not just abstract concepts. They were forces as real and powerful as gravity itself. Before the emotion could overflow, Michael looked at me with a serious but not severe expression. There is something you must remember, Elowen. Using substances that disrupt the body's natural balance is not a path to clarity, but a dangerous shortcut. You were protected this time, but don't count on it in the future. Life is precious and you should treat it with the respect it deserves. His words sank into me like a firm and inescapable lesson. I felt a wave of gratitude mixed with regret, a silent promise that I would respect this gift called life. The environment around us glowed with a new intensity, and I felt like my journey was coming to an end. The golden light that surrounded us began to transform into a rising wave of heat, as if I was being pulled back into the physical world. I looked at Michael one last time, and his eyes brimmed with understanding and a silent goodbye. "Remember, Elowen," he said, his voice echoing like a melody that would forever be etched into my being. "Carry love forward and trust that your message will find those who need to hear it." The white realm around us began to unravel in a whirlwind of lights and energy. I felt my spirit being pulled toward the earth, as if I were passing through invisible layers of reality. The return trip was more intense and complex than the departure. Each layer seemed to ground me a little more, like I was fitting back into a denser version of myself. Suddenly, a feeling of heaviness began to manifest itself. First came the sound, muffled voices and indistinct noises. Then, pressure in my lungs and a sharp pain that made me want to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. It was as if my physical body was a heavy suit of armor that I was being forced to return to. I opened my eyes, but everything was a blur of colors. Little by little, the faces around me became clear, especially Mia's, who was crying with a mixture of relief and despair. "She's back. Elowen." Mia's voice sounded broken but full of emotion. His hand still held my arm, and I felt his touch like an anchor pulling me back to the present. Other curious and worried faces looked over the seats, and the bus driver was standing, looking at me with wide, perplexed eyes. I tried to take a deep breath, but a tightness in my chest made it difficult. Every sense came back little by little, the blurry vision, the intermittent hearing, the metallic taste in the mouth. When I was able to sit up straight, the world around me still seemed a little distorted, as if I was seeing through a thin glass of water, but something inside me was different. I carried a quiet certainty, a knowing that no one around me could fully understand. "It's okay, I'm here," I managed to say, my voice weak but firm enough to comfort Mia. The words came out like a promise, not just to her, but to myself. As the bus resumed its journey and people dispersed, still whispering and giving me sidelong glances, a phrase echoed in my mind, repeated like a mantra: "Love and kindness are the forces that change everything." And with this understanding, a new journey began, not in an ethereal realm, but in the real world, where I knew that my every action could, in some way, make a difference. The responsibility of the message I received weighed on my shoulders, but not in an oppressive way. It was a calling, a purpose that I now understood clearly. I knew that November 10th to 12th would be a crucial period, and that my mission would be to convey this to the world in some way. And although doubt and fear were natural, one thing was certain: I would never be the same. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.